Hey, what is up, everybody? I am Dr. Vibe, host and producer of the Dr. Vibe Show. As always, I like to say you're blessed and highly favored, a magnet for miracles and a solution for someone's problem. As I always like to say, one of the blessings or two of the blessings I have in my life are the two individuals who are on with me right now. They make me a better man and they make me a better human. So I really appreciate them taking time to share with us. And we continue with our manhood series of conversations. First up, we have the tip of the spear when it comes to MKP Chicago, the Mankind Project, in Chicago. I'm so excited. Mr. Glenn Barker. How are you, Glenn?
Very good. Good to be with you, men and listeners. Thanks for coming. Let me be on the program again.
Oh, you know what? It's our program. It's not a let. We ride together. So it's not a let. We ride together. And Dr. T, how things down in New Orleans?
Rainy.
Well,
but not nearly busy. And, I got to say this. Glenn Barker had a men's weekend over the past several days, and they are intense. And I'm just looking at him right now. And, Glenn, the first thing I thought that I expected was to see you sitting there dragging, but you look as energetic as always, my friend. So it must have been a great weekend.
It absolutely was. Perhaps we'll get a chance to go into those men's weekends to let our listeners know what a joy they are for bringing men to a new consciousness. Thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we'll talk about what you guys do at the tail end of the show because we already have some people watching. So, let's get right into it. Glenn,
yeah,
as usual, you bring a great subject of conversation tonight. And I think specifically you may want to talk about men, but letting go of the lie in a man's life. I know you've discussed this. We've discussed it in previous conversations, but I think you really want to focus on this during this conversation. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. Why did you want to talk about this? Give some background about this topic about men letting go of the lie.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Vibe, and welcome everybody to the program.
Yes.
I believe that since we have a pretty large female audience as well, I think the human dilemma, which is kind of like damned if I do, damned if I don't, is a universal human dilemma, condition, I should say. I don't think that's unique to men, women, children, or any culture. It is simply a position that one finds itself in, persons find themselves in, where it seems like each alternative is just as bad as the other. And typically for me, what I see crop up in myself and others as I work with men is a coping mechanism that harkens back to an earlier time, typically a childhood. And so if we're not handling our dilemmas very well, that means we don't have the best coping skills in order to work through those things. And this is what I focus on often because this is usually the pivotal point that says, do I work from my resourcefulness or my victimhood? And this is a very big part of the men's work. And so what I wanted to introduce today was to do a little myth busting, or I should say a second level to an old adage. Like the truth will set us free. It is a great saying, and I think it holds great merit. And yet I think there's a second part that is the shadow version of it, which is the other counterpart, which without a secondary level, if it does not become another universal truth, may sabotage the aha moment of a discovery of a truth. And I'll put it in the simplest terms I know how. And I love the audience and all of us tonight to spend tonight revealing to us what have been the lies. So let me put a whole ribbon around the whole piece saying, knowing the truth changes nothing. Letting go of the lie that you've been living changes everything. So the truth is the aha moment that says, I've discovered something unique. But until we let go of the lie that has been perpetrating the behavior, the truth in itself solely changes very little. It gives us the big why explanation that we all want to know. Why did this happen to me? Why this? Why did you cheat? Why there's suffering in the world? We find out the why, and that says, I've discovered something. Now what? What is the disbelief that's been empowering your actions and driving your bus all those years that have you let to unless you let go of that one, the truth will matter very little, because it's not driving your behavior. It's not your motivation to do anything different. And so that's what I take it into. And that bleeds into stories that we've made up, lies that we've been living. And until we start to take apart those lies and own the new truth, right, in that sense. So I'd like to add that second part. And I'd like that to be really the main focus of the evening, and ask a lot of participation of our listeners and our panel. Let's reveal some lies that we've been living. And we know when we deconstructed those lies and stories, this is what really changed our lives, not just a discovery of a new truth. So if we're all up for that, Dr. Thompson, I'd like to have a little bit of your experience around this perception.
Well, first of all, you laid it out beautifully, because it is about the lies that we tell, and they manifest themselves, like you said, in stories. And, you know, one of the things that's really important that I think that the listeners can connect with, in psychological circles, what Glenn is describing is called locus of control. It's an actual psychological phenomena that individuals use to either assume control of their situation or give it away. And in the context of what Glenn's discussing, is the giving away component of locus of control. And it's interesting, and I'm going to give you an example. It's ironic we're having this discussion. I had a discussion this afternoon with a grandmother who contacted me about her granddaughter who has a learning disorder, a disability. And this disability really manifests itself in a lot of anger, a lot of lashing out, and a lot of acting out. The child's 8 years old, and to hear this grandmother, I heard several things. I heard her hurt and her desire for her granddaughter to get better, but I also heard her story, her lie. And this, we can call it a lie, but I think this is more of a story that really gets to the heart of what Glenn was describing about the impact of a lie, not only on the individual, but those that they encounter. This grandmother began to explain to me what this girl's future was going to be. She went into describing all of the steps that she and her family, her daughter and son-in-law, had taken to help this child overcome some of her disabilities, but with no success. So she began to start projecting what their life would be like and what this child's life would be like well into her adulthood, 30s, talking about the fact she may never have children. What I heard was her story based on what she had not accomplished, had not figured out, and had drawn a conclusion, and thereby had already created a story, a lie, that was going to influence every action and interaction she was going to have with this kid. What's significant about this is her story may not match the child's story. And this is where they see the conflict. So when adults begin to start acting on the story they have about a child, and it doesn't match the child's story, you have ongoing conflict. And I asked the mother several questions about what the girl wanted, and she paused and she asked me, "What do you mean?" And I just smiled, because we got to the heart of the matter. You're not engaging this child on her story. So here the lie about that relationship is being defined by those who have power and influence over this child's life. And that just happened this afternoon. And I made sure that I got this in early, because I know our conversations get a good flow. But I thought for any listener who might be trying to get a context of what we're going to be discussing, along with what you gave an excellent overview of the framework for it, I thought that example really manifests itself in what this issue is all about. And it's not just about people, but it's about any situation where it's momentary, whether it's long-term. It can be lies about people, why someone did something. I'm going to make up this story. And we begin to live on that thought. It drives our emotions drive our actions, and those actions drive outcomes.
Okay, well, I guess it's my turn to chime in. I already seeing a really good flow already, and I'm going to really first of all, thank everyone who's watching live, and there is a seat open if you want to contribute, or you can contribute through the comments section. There's a number of comments going on already, but there is a seat open. We welcome people to come in and join our conversations. It isn't the same unless we get people, whether it's text-wise or video-wise, joining in. I've got a question then for both of you men. What is a lie that you were growing up with that you had to let go? And if you want, I can start with myself, but you guys, if you want to start first, I can put it out to you. Or if you want me to go first, it's up to you. As a man,
I will be glad to put mine on the tip of the sword, because you're right, Dr. Vibe. So let's I'll just say there's certain arenas. Dr. Thompson did a great illustration of a parental authority figure's story they're making up, a lie that will manifest and have influence. The impact of an authority figure on a young person is profound. So to be aware of the lies we're telling is very, very important. Now, like Dr. Vibe has just done, he's asked me personally in my own life, and this is a whole nother arena. So think of this as listeners as we go through this. Anytime we don't have real good data, we make something up. And we'll go on that belief because we need something to hang on to, even if it's a fabrication. Some of it comes from our own assumptions because we don't get answers. Some of it comes from authority figures. But we will, if you really think about it, you may be making up stories about politics, about race, about yourself, about gender, about age, about just about any type of encounter. So let me put mine out there. It's a big one from my childhood. Unknown to me, I always tested as a very bright child, and yet they couldn't figure out what was, quote, wrong with the boy. Until I discovered at 40 years old that I'm a dyslexic. In the days of my growing up, it was a reading problem. It was a learning disability, but they had no context to put it around. So I was put in the slow class, and then I would get some tutelage, and I would catch on quickly, and then be double promoted, and then fail. I would be promoted with help, and then fail without help. And so what's up? Am I lazy? And so I'm working diligently hard. Now, without having a good explanation, I formulated an opinion about myself. And that opinion was I am defective. I am defective. There is something wrong with me. And this defective gene or something that I had, to me, shaped my attitudes about my entire ability to perform in public with others or compete with others. Because especially in school, the measurement of your worth besides your social interaction is your education ability. And I was failing on all fronts. The math, the reading, but testing grades. So this duality came that there was something very exceptional about me in one regard, but it was out there, esoteric. So I had some hope in an imaginary sense, but in a real practical world sense, I could not bring myself to know how I was going to make it in this world, and that affected me all through my adulthood. I mean, I was so shame-based that I even raised a child without her knowing I was dyslexic. I would struggle to read her books and memorize them so that I could pretend I was reading to her when she was growing up. These things made me believe, I should say, caused me to make up a story that I was not good at many things, that I can't compete in corporate America. I can't do the regurgitation methods everybody can. Don't ask me to do any kind of accounting or balance any kind of books. How am I going to fit into a world, right, where all these things are demanded of me? So I had an avoidance strategy. I have an avoidance strategy that brought me through entrepreneurship, but also with a great fear of failure and a great drive to success. And because I felt my whole life I had nothing to fall back on, no real education that the others, the rest of the world had. So how did I find out this was a lie? It's not a lie that I'm dyslexic. It's a lie that it affects everything about me. Because once I really understood what this gift actually was and what a powerful strategist and person I could become, I started to realize this. That lie caused me to make up a loser's limp about everything. How could I be a good anything? And we'll also talk about the benefit of having a loser circle to run into and not take risks. But on the positive side of it, I came to understand, that doesn't mean I can't be a good father. What's that got to do with dyslexia? I could be a great leader. What's that got to do with dyslexia? I could be a great friend. I can learn skills that are very needed in this world, like I did in this work that I do now, and all through my life, I became a sales professional that cared so much about others that my compassion grew because of what I went through became my sensitivity to other people. I understand this part that so many people struggle with. So the lie was that it affected everything about me and it made all of me no good. Now I know the truth because I discovered what it was. I put it in a category with some work that said, this is a part of me I cannot change. It will not change. But it does not mean it is all of me. I am much bigger than this piece. Right? This may not ever change, yet that lie was everything. Now it's that thing. I'm pulling gifts from it and becoming a better man. So that's the lie I told myself. And until I deconstructed that lie, even knowing the truth that I had dyslexia didn't help as much as deconstructing the lie that I could not be a great, better, compassionate, powerful, successful man. When I deconstructed that lie, my life changed.
Wonderful. Glenn, wow, that's huge. And Dr. Will Perez saying, what a great story. You have the truth about self. Thanks for sharing it. If anyone wants to jump in on a seat and overcome, like tell a story about a lie or a truth that you knew.
Let's take down the lies tonight, everybody. Let's take down the lie.
Yeah. Take on the lies and let's bash them. What lies have you broken through? Because it's not just us. And I really appreciate the comments. But
what lies are you still living with? What have you made up about the world? What do you make up about yourself? What do you make up about others? Is it the truth?
Or is
it a lie?
Dr. T, do you want in at all?
Well, you asked the question, what lies have we been holding on to? And Glenn's story, he and I have discussed this at length, and it has so many implications. My lie is much has to do with learning. My mother, I overheard a conversation my mom had with a teacher about the fact that I wasn't doing well in math. And what at the time I knew that my mother did not know, and this was in the third grade, was the reason I wasn't doing well in math was because we had just moved to a new school. My dad was a Marine. We moved every 18 months. So this was our second move. I wasn't all that thrilled with where I was. I wasn't used to the moving process. But my mom, in the conversation with the teacher, stated that I wasn't good in math because she wasn't good in math. I overheard that conversation, and for the entire length of my public school education, I didn't put forth an effort in math because I had an out. My mom wasn't good at math. I'm not going to be good at math, so I didn't have to try. That story allowed me to do several things: not put forth an effort, and also not have to be accountable to my parents or my mom specifically about the grade. So if I wasn't doing well, and a C in my house was not doing well, but if I wasn't doing well in school, and particularly in math, she wasn't going to push that. That was always an easy pass for me. The irony of that was years later, when I was in the 11th grade, I failed a 6 weeks grading period of Algebra 2. I'd never gotten an F before. I'd been done poorly in math, but never failed. That hit me hard. But my mom, even at that time, consoled me. And it was something that I didn't overcome until I went to college, took a statistics class, and aced it. And it wasn't math that I was poor at. It was someone else's perception that empowered me to be less than what I could be. And those are some of the lies that we live on. And sometimes we influence them ourselves. But oftentimes, I think Glenn alluded to this when he asked the question, what about the world? What lies are out there about the world? And that world is anything outside of you.
Well said.
And most people say globally. I think globally when you say the world is anything outside of you being in control.
Well,
wonderful.
Great story. And we've had I love people who step into our conversation because we love you lots. Hello, Robin. How are you?
Hello, Robin.
Robin, can you
Hello,
hear
Robin.
us? I don't know if Robin can. Okay, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
My computer, I'm not sure if my internet's moving slow. Sometimes people are in and out, so I'm going to probably make this quick before I lose everyone. But it seems like
No problem.
the theme is education, and I want to keep with the theme of men, and I don't want to steal the show because this is like it's about men.
No. This is more an open show where it's hosted by men.
Okay.
But it is for everybody.
Okay. Well, with talking with the lies and men, and with my son, it seems like with schools and the testing now, there seems to be a big hurting children to label them. I'm a therapist and my ex-husband is a therapist, and so I'm noticing my son since first grade, because of the standardized testing and the way he learns, they wanted to put him into a category, and they didn't realize who they were dealing with parent-wise, so they were trying to find some sort of label to put on him because he moves slow. Not because he's mentally slow, but because he's a turtle. He just moves at his own pace. He learns at his own pace. So they were trying to give him a diagnosis. The teachers and the intervention specialists and everyone, not the school psychologist. The school psychologist found nothing wrong with my son. It was the teachers, because they wanted him to test well. And so every year I had to fight with have these team meetings to not have my son labeled with these labels, and I would not allow them to put these lies on him. And it wasn't until he was put in the class with a male teacher, and I had to sit down with the male teacher and say, let me tell you what's going on with him, and I do not want you to baby him. He's going to move slow. Do not buy into this lie that he can't do the work. Don't baby him. Don't rub his back. Don't, push him and make him work harder. It wasn't until he was in Mr. Miller's class that he was actually pushed out of that lie that he couldn't do the work. Yes, he still moves slow. Yes, you still have to put a little fire under him. But that labeling, I had to kick that. But if he didn't have a parent like me and his dad to sit there and say the only people at this table who is licensed to diagnose are us, he would have got thrown in that category with the rest of the kids. We're getting these IEPs and these 504 plans so they can get this extra time to test, not that they actually have something wrong with them. So I just wanted to put that out there, that's what's going on in the schools right now, especially with the boys, because boys learn differently than girls. They just do.
Especially the boys.
Yeah.
This is one for Dr. Tom. This is Dr. Thompson all over.
Right up. So don't leave us, Robin, because
don't go away, Robin.
This is a group of men that are here to support you. So don't go away until someone wants to jump out. You have a seat. So jump in. Go ahead, Dr. T.
Yeah, Robin, everything you said is about as accurate as any qualified educator could speak on it. And you're dealing with it from the perspective where it should be, with this as a parent for your child. And let me talk about this locus of control. You started it, and this is the lie. Schools have a responsibility. It's actually a part of the structure to label and identify. They present it to the public as it's a process and a tool used to help your child achieve. The reality of that manifests itself differently, and we know this from 40 years of experiencing that. If in fact this were true, your system of labeling would have all kids at the same level, so much so that we couldn't identify any differences. You would have mastered the art of preparing teachers and your system to not have those differences.
Right.
We know they're different when they walk in the door, but we should produce it. So I applaud you for recognizing that and maintaining ownership of your child's future that way. And let me address the other part of this, the boys versus girls. And the three of us, Dr. Vibe and Glenn and I, have done previous shows on this very topic before. And let me just say this clearly. Schools are not designed for boys. They're structured by the very nature of boys. And I've been in education for 25 years. I started out as a 5th grade teacher. I've held every position in the school that you can possibly hold, from teacher to superintendent. Schools are not designed for boys because they require a behavior that is not inherently native and natural for boys.
Right.
Boys are not naturally still. Boys are not naturally obedient. They are very tactile learners. They have to manipulate their world. And the school system and its structure is not designed for boys to do that. So sometimes what I see in boys' behavior is, and your son may have adapted, I don't know him. You describe him as he's slow moving. I have one of those, trust me. I had a son growing up, boy. Mm-hmm. If I didn't light a fire under him or threaten to just, within an inch of his life, he wasn't moving faster than a half a mile an hour.
Exactly, right? Exactly.
But he always got it done. So what I learned to do with that boy was, before I gave him instructions, I put what I wanted him to do in the form of a question.
Okay.
Is it possible? Can you do it? Because keep in mind, boys love controlling their environment. They love the challenge. They love the idea of discovery, right? So I would sit with him and go, what if? How about? Can you do that? What do you think? And immediately he went from a half a mile an hour to 50 miles an hour, because his whole goal was to control something. So I actually empowered him to just take on things.
Okay.
He is now 22 years old, and to this day, I get texts and phone calls that say, hey, what about this? I haven't talked to him in weeks. And all of a sudden, our conversations typically start with a question and an idea that he has.
Okay.
Because now he knows to go challenge the world. And he and my daughter could not wait. I never saw two kids who could not wait to get out of high school on their first day. They spent 4 years in high school going, this is a joke. They don't teach me anything. They want me to comply. And as long as I check the right box, fill in the right blank, I'm going to pass.
Right.
And that's what obedient kids do. And I can tell that you're not raising an obedient kid. You're trying to raise you're raising a boy.
It's
right?
interesting. It was interesting because it was after the third grade meeting. We had they said he had comprehension issues, and they had him reading C-Spot Run books with this intervention specialist. And I was trying to explain to her that the books were beneath him. And she was so offended in how he needed to read these C-Spot Run books. And I'm saying that he is into science. He can tell you everything about every bug. Sorry, there was a gnat in my face. About every bug known to man. And she's saying, no, he needs this comprehension stuff. And I'm like, that's beneath him. As soon as we get home, now he wasn't in the meeting, but as soon as I get home, he starts explaining plate tectonics to me. And I'm sitting there like, I was just in a meeting where they're telling me that my son has comprehension issues. And then he's telling me about plate tectonics, something I didn't learn about until my undergrad degree. And I said, these people know nothing of what they're talking about. He learns what interests him. That C-Spot Run book was not interesting. So yeah, he took all day reading that C-Spot Run book because it was stupid to him. And you babied him, so yeah, he's going to take.
And
his
a million
time.
other boys, and 10 million other boys.
Right. Exactly.
Robin, I'm going to point. I just put something, and I misspelled pedagogy, but I want you to remember this and write it down.
Okay.
What you just described was the pedagogy of teaching. Teachers are trained to deliver instruction by a method called pedagogy.
Okay.
It is the inherent methodologies of teaching instruction. Okay. I helped several years ago, starting in 2009, and it's a project that's ongoing. Helped rewrite the education curriculum for the University of South Africa that actually educates over 50% of all the teachers who teach in the continent of Africa. And the approach that we took was just what you were beginning to move to. And parents have a natural instinct for learning. They bore the child and they got them to school. They're the first teacher.
Right.
And you said something first teachers do. Pedagogy is taking learning from the view of the learner. And that means taking the knowledge that the learner already has and expanding it rather than teaching them as empty vessels. Pedagogy assumes that you're an empty vessel, so I need a method. When you teach students through a pedagogical approach, you already acknowledge their self-worth and their knowledge.
Okay.
And that's what good, effective teaching is. It's what good parenting is. And this is how I think in this discussion of lies, when their story is told from their knowledge, a good parent and a good teacher has the opportunity to nix lies and question the learner
Mm-hmm.
so that they can have that introspection and self-reflection that Glenn alluded to earlier when we started, so that you can start challenging your own lie and get to the truth.
Right.
I'm just going to, before we go any further, I want to say shout out to a bunch of people here who have joined the conversation, at least watching, and also via the chat. We have at Suit and Tie TV. We have at Wholeful Living. We also have our friend, A Streaming Voice. We also have Smile Pretty Lady. We have the Honorable Michael Couteau, Minister of Tourism, Sport and Culture in the province of Ontario. So again, if anyone would like to jump in to take a seat, just send me a text on the side and we can continue on. I also want to give a comment, Dr. Will Perez, saying where all is analytic and there is no holistic balance. There's no holistic balance when it's all analytic.
Mm-hmm.
He's absolutely correct. And our system today has moved to an analytical approach, and the holistic development of the child has taken a total backseat. You don't hear or read any more discussions about child development other than anything negative. Mm-hmm. And think about that Glenn, new story. And Glenn, you want to comment about that? That's the new story and the new narrative being written for our young people today. That becomes their story and the lens through which they look at themselves.
Glenn, I know you've got something to add. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question for Robin. And so for the listener who maybe just came in, as we talk about lies, we're talking about not necessarily that people are lying to us, not in that framework. But let me put this to Robin. Robin,
Mm-hmm.
your son, what lie are you trying to avoid your son making up about himself? Because that's what I want to get to in these conversations. What I believe I hear from you is you were seeing how this boy might develop. If this went unchecked, luckily, you have a perception, you understand this impact it might have had on your son. Mm-hmm. Let's go back to your son. What were you trying to avoid impacting him that would affect his whole life because of the lie he would have been telling himself? Please speak to that, Robin.
Okay. Now, remember, I'm a therapist, so I saw much more going on than what meets the eye. So I knew socially something was going on with him. So first I wanted to lie that he was stupid. That was the first one, that he couldn't do the work. That was the first lie. The second lie was that
you didn't want him to adopt that.
Yes.
You didn't want him
I didn't want him to adopt that lie.
Himself.
Right. Now, in first grade, going all the way back to first grade, he had a friend, and the friend was bad. They used to cut up together. They laughed, and he would constantly get his behavior chart turned to blue every time he laughed or if he dropped a pencil or something. And so he shut down socially. And so then he didn't know then the friend moved away. He didn't know how to make new friends. And so by the time we got to third grade, and there was other factors. He had food allergies and they kept him at a separate table, and I found out about that. So it was like he didn't know how to make new friends. So I'm at this meeting and I'm trying to tell the teachers what's going on with him academically has to do with him socially. And he needs something social. He's not fitting in, and so he's shrinking. They didn't want to hear that. So what I did was I chaperoned a field trip. And I grabbed a couple boys and put them in a group with me. They all became friends. They took their little pictures like this and all at the nature center. By the time that field trip was over, the teacher said, "I don't know what happened, but he's come to life. And he's a different kid. And all of a sudden now he's adapting well. He's picking up all of a sudden." And I said, "I told you it was social." So going back to the holistic, they all, when we're in school, they oftentimes think that it's always something wrong with them intellectually, and they don't know how to look at maybe there's something else going on with this kid besides the fact that it's an academic thing. Maybe there's something else. So I went and chaperoned a trip.
Fortunate. Very, very fortunate to have you in his life, and maybe probably those other boys as well. And for those that aren't quite that fortunate,
I pulled one of the bad. I pull on the bad boys too, so because that's what I do is I work with teens and stuff. So I pulled one of him too. I said I want that little boy. He said I'm scared. I said you coming with me. So I actually put a group of them and worked with them together. So she was happy to have me on the field trip because I kind of worked with a few of the kids.
Wonderful.
So,
Isn't that wonderful?
I'm sure they invited you back. I'm sure they invited you to chaperone again, didn't they?
I didn't do any more. That was it. I don't really do field trips, but I just did that one because I needed to help my baby. So, but I got that was in third grade.
Before we let you go, Robin, would you be so brave and courageous to say what's been a lie that you know that you a story that you made up about something, a lie that you were living, that once you deconstructed that, it really changed your life? What would you want to say anything from? Yes, if you feel so inclined.
For myself, it was the academics. It was the same thing. I grew up inner city. I want to say more so just not just academics, just about anything. I just didn't think I could until I just started applying myself. And all of a sudden, I own my own business. I have my own private practice.
But what was the lie?
What's the lie?
The lie is that.
What was the lie you had to get over about you?
I was going to be I was going to be nothing. I had a teacher tell me that in high school. I was going to be nothing.
And what was the story you made up about yourself that made you believe you were nothing?
I don't think I made this.
You were telling yourself something. It was because and because and because and because.
Because right? I was, it probably just because I was so picked on and I just wanted to be invisible. From childhood, just being picked on, and I just wanted to shrink away. But then there was just always this something inside of me that wanted to be more. And then once I got into a safe place and I went off to college, that was a safe place to be who I wanted to be. I just took off from there.
And you had to take some risks for that to happen, though. You had to face some of these things that you believed about yourself in order to break through that. How did you do that, Robin? What gave you the courage to say, all your life you said, no, I'm not good. Basically, I'm not good enough was the story. And then all of a sudden, the magic wand came one day and you got ruby red slippers and everything was fine? No, you did something very unique and you took a risk. What happened?
I remember I was in college because I really did think I was going to flunk out of college because that's what everybody else seemed to do. If anything, the risk was paying for college. It cost me something. So I said, if it's going to cost me, I might as well try and see what I can do. If I try my hardest, see what happens. And I made the dean's list.
Congratulations.
So you had, once I made the dean's list, wow. So skin in the game was big for you. If I'm going to put this investment in, I'm right. So skin in the game is kind of your leverage piece. If I'm really going to put myself out there, this is going to cost me. And so I'm going to, it motivates you to do something. It's an important piece for you, huh?
Yeah. And then I just realized my ability. When I put it out there and I saw that I could do it, then there was just no stopping me. Once I made that dean's list and I said, wow, I can do this. Nice. It's been in me all the time.
Nice.
Thank you, Robin. A great contribution to the show. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
We'll catch you later.
Thank you, Robin.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. And all the best to your son, too. All right. So, everyone, great story there. And that's what we're all about here on Tuesday nights at 8:30. Most of the time we talk about manhood subject, but it's hosted by men. But it doesn't mean it doesn't include men. It includes all. If anyone else wants to jump in the seat, you may have a tall order to follow from Robin, but you can certainly jump in regards to if you have a lie that you had to overcome and what did you do to break the lie. Very, very
right. Where the truth was just not quite enough. The truth said, okay, now that I know, what do you have to let go of on a secondary level in order to really actualize?
Absolutely.
So now that we're between guests, and we'll talk a little bit, with your permission, about how this does apply to men, because I believe men in particular are a lot more secretive about their hurts.
A little bit. That's better. There you go. All right.
I believe men are a little more protective of their hurts. I understand the way I understand men and women. Women will take a greater emotional risk to get their needs met than men will. I think women don't feel as that you can use their emotions against them as much as men do. And so part of what happens to us as young men, and I think some of it's hardwired, but I think also a lot of it's socialization. Men protect their vulnerabilities for very good reasons. If you knew what could hurt me, you may very well use that as a weapon against me. And that for men is devastating. There's something about the emotional makeup of women that seems to, in the most part, give them permission to share their emotions and be nurtured and understood. Men often tell me that they feel their emotions being exposed have been used as a weapon against them all the way from childhood, making fun, picking on, being picked on, trusting others that then use this trust to bludgeon them with, and men without quite the emotional upbringing to develop their voice, I think especially feel vulnerable to emotional attack, ridicule, and shaming. And so men have the facade. So I take off my mask only in certain circumstances, with only certain folks that I have a trust. And the risk is that if I trust you, that you will then hurt me by me sharing my secret, my darkness, my vulnerability. So this is something for men that is a deeper part of this thing about knowing the truth does help. That's recognizing the big boulder in a man's life. Letting go of the lie, I think, may even be harder in some ways for men because they've been hanging on to that for so long. And by the time I met men, that these stories are so antiquated that without them, there's an identity piece that goes away. And so while we're thinking about the next guest, think about how tied our identity is with our story. If I'm not this person, who am I?
Right.
If I'm not what I believed, then who am I? Who would I be without that story? Right? So like all of a sudden, I think this happens with adopted children. All of a sudden, they find out that these are not your parents.
Yep.
For many adopted, even adults, they go, wow, I've been living a lie. And there is a cognitive dissonance, it's called, between what we thought was reality and what truly is. And this is quite a shattering of the whole story that I made up about my life and my family and who my brothers were. You mean you're not? You're not my parents? Was this a lie? I was, because I'm making up a whole fantasy world. Now that I discover it was a fantasy world, now I have to go discover the truth. Many see adopted adults say, so that I can try to reconcile this now break in the story that I believed was true, which is what is actually, I need to discover a new truth for me. So if anybody else would like to share this kind of pieces, this is, I think, impacts our world in ways that I don't hear many talk about. And I think it's a very integral part of our work as humans. I think especially deep and profound for men, because when you get an opportunity to do these things, a new kind of light shines in. Not just the light of truth, but the light into shadow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Glenn, can you share any experiences? Okay, no, let's roll back. Let's have a group discussion here about what sort of lies that we hear the men that we deal with. What are they living with? And it could be generalities. It could be specific examples. Like, of course, you always hear the one of men feel that they're invincible. You know, you hear that. What are some of the and the audience too, if you want to type in or if you want to call in, what are some of the generalizations we hear, lies we hear about men, or what have men come to us and say lies, and we've had a chance to hear them share with us? I don't know if it's the right type of question, but you know where my heart's coming from in regards to this. Dr. T?
Well, I'm going to go back to what Glenn was talking about, and I think what your question suggests, they'll merge together. When men have this inherent closed-off approach to the world, they're very protective. So the lie is, in fact, what they build themselves around, and as Glenn alluded to. But I think there's another portion of this where I hear the lie, and I deal particularly with young men, adolescents, and those lies are told in the form of excuses. So it's not an outright lie, but it's an excuse. It's the reason why I behave this way. It's the reason why I don't do something. It's the reason why I don't try. It's the reason why I'm not successful. And at the same time, I also hear the lie in the reasons why they are successful. See, for every, action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, and the same thing applies to thought. So, as we talk about lies, success has lies woven into them equally. And I have encountered just as many young men who claim to be successful and claim their success because they are brilliant. But because they believe they're brilliant, they put in more effort. I never dispel their belief that they're brilliant. I let them think that they're brilliant. When in fact, reality says, when you look at what they do and we look at their assessments and their patterns and their capacities, they're brilliant in the fact that they know where to apply their strengths. And that's what makes them brilliant. Telling them that actually helps break down their lie that's been successful for them. So sometimes, I want to make this clear, sometimes lies are good for people. It's when those lies get out of hand and they become, as Glenn alluded to earlier, they become shadow parts of ourselves. So yeah. I've encountered young men who have created lies around themselves to be successful, only to have that lie turn on them. And they turn on them in the form of ego. Yeah. They turn on them in form of tyranny or really aggressive or assertive behavior with their peers. And likewise, I've seen young men who lie to themselves that they don't try because my mom doesn't do this or somebody doesn't do this, when in fact, they won't own it because they're afraid of failure. Or they don't know step one and they don't know how to communicate. I don't know step one, because the lie in the culture is, I'm a man, I have no weakness. Well, so all of this is what I've seen and encountered.
Okay, well, I was looking forward to have Tashawn come on, and she just disappeared for a moment. So
I'm coming right back. I'll be right back.
Okay. I'll come.
Glenn, did you
comment on Dr. Thompson here?
I had to turn on the light. I realized I'm in my dining room eating because everybody's downstairs watching the World Series.
Okay. All right, Tashawn, thank you so much for stopping by. And for those who don't know her, she is an outstanding lady who has just got so much talent and so much heart. So I'm very pleased that you're wanting to join our conversation. What would you like to share with ourselves and our audience tonight?
Well, thank you very much. How are you gentlemen doing? I've been listening.
We're doing great.
Blessed.
Welcome.
It's a great show. Great show.
Thank you. Well, thank you.
You all are, I like to listen to articulate people express themselves on a regular basis. But it says letting go of the lie.
Yeah.
I had to talk to someone about this today. A person I was potentially coaching, and she had an opportunity to, sit with me. I am eating. She has an opportunity to sit with me and tell the truth. And she wanted to keep telling me the lie. Like, we really got to the core of it. And I asked her, well, what's the problem? She kept saying she didn't know. I'm like, that's not true. You lying. I get very direct with my clients because I used to be a habitual liar, and I know how I end up being that way because I used to get punished for things I didn't do. So I would lie to try to appease that person, and it became a very bad habit. So I don't judge liars at all. I don't judge them in the least. I know most of the time it's a defense mechanism. There's like two types of lies. There are lies of defense and there's lies of malice. Most people don't lie, do the second one. They don't go out of their way to intentionally hurt you. They're giving a defense mechanism to either protect themselves from the potential hurt that they have, or they're doing it to appease to keep from hurting someone else. So I always find it so interesting how people get offended when they say, I don't like a liar. And I'm like, you lie. What are you talking about? That's not your hair.
Who cast the first stone? Cast the first stone.
And God said the greatest sin to him is a lying tongue. And that's why I said, if that was the case, everybody be burned up right now. Everybody lies. But we don't really want to talk because we have such egos. So check this out. The biggest lie that I discovered that wasn't true was the lie that if I went to be myself, that I would be alone, that no one would love
That's
me.
what we wanted to get to. Go there, Deshaun. Talk about that.
You know,
That was the biggest.
if Glenn
lie.
if Glenn's loving this, you got to roll on. So you got the space. Eat and
This
share.
is what we're after here.
Eat and share.
This is
Go
what we're
for
really
it,
after.
John. Go for it, please.
It was a lie. It was a complete lie.
Well, back us up. Tell us about it.
Like for instance, what's interesting.
Back to the beginning. We wanted this. It's about unraveling the story. Go on back how it started. Where did you formulate it? How did it manifest?
The people that do it the most are visiting me right now, and they know how I feel. I tell them, don't say nothing to me, because if you didn't do it, I wouldn't say it.
Can I get you to talk about you?
Yeah, mine is.
Oh my God.
Mine is easy.
She's great.
Mine is pretty simple. Don't ever tell someone, this is the lie I want people to stop believing, that nobody will love you like your family. That is a damn lie. That's a lie.
But Tashawn, I think what Glenn is wanting is he wants you to take us through the journey that you just talked about, high level. And are you comfortable enough of saying, what was the lie? What made you change that lie or get out of that lie?
Easy. When I sat down and realized and was able to take inventory that I had other people in my life who chose to act differently or chose to remain in friendship or fellowship with me, no matter how I acted. And I realized that wasn't true. I was never going to be alone because I was never alone. I was never alone because, number one, I was with myself. When I got into the car accident 2 years ago, and I was usually by myself, I was with myself.
Mm-hmm.
Went to the therapist, found out I was an introvert. So it kind of told me why I did the weird things I did. I was extra gregarious on here, but I spent 80% of my time alone. You know, and people tell you that's weird. You shouldn't isolate yourself. You become a hermit. That's only applicable to extroverts. Extroverts have a problem with that. I was good. I liked being with myself. And once I had someone to validate that, that was the first peel back of the lie. Like, wait a minute. I'm not lonely. I enjoy the luxury of my own company.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was the first step.
But before that, you had a story about you. Before that, you had a story about you that might have troubled you, right?
No, I don't go into stories. I don't go into stories on these. And the reason why I don't go into stories, we will be talking about this for about 30-year story. I get to the point. Y'all know me. We have a 30-year story. I want to let everybody know about the lie because we'll be here for 30 years. And honestly, it's nothing personal because I know you want to hear it, and we may do it at another blab or maybe tomorrow. But I got tired of talking about that story.
Sure.
I got tired of reliving it because guess what? Every time I kept reliving it, I was reliving and perpetuating the lie. I was perpetuating it in every relationship in my life. It was okay to keep doing that. That no one's going to care about me as much as my family. Blood is thicker than water. No, that's not true. Because the people who get,
But your experience led you to draw that conclusion, right? So
yeah,
right. That's really what got you to change that dynamic.
The discovery, when I discovered when I chose not to believe it
through an experience.
Mm-hmm. Well, for me, it wasn't an experience. I always knew that it wasn't true. Well, it didn't matter what I just, that wasn't true. I'm like, that is not true because you are those people, and that can't be true because it's not true. It just isn't true. It was something in my God spirit, it kept telling me that's not true. You know, sometimes when you hear something and you just like, no matter how convincing it looks, you're like, that's not true.
Yeah.
Mine was that I can't ignore.
Well, there's a line in the movie that I remember. I don't know what the movie is, but it says the guy says, just because you say it with conviction doesn't make it so.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the fear of being alone, that no one understood, because when you become an entrepreneur or you are a leader, sometimes you have to go out and you're the first one. And people say, oh, it's lonely. It's only lonely if you don't like your own company. It's only lonely if you don't like your own thoughts. It's only lonely if you're not busy. Mm-hmm. Working in your purpose. If you're not busy on things that you're passionate about. I am way too busy ever to be lonely. when I started appreciating how I did the way stuff that I do, and now I'm getting back and I can physically, I never appreciated work until I couldn't work. I never appreciated what I was able to do until I couldn't walk or talk.
How therapeutic
And,
work can be. Yeah.
oh my
Although
God.
I will say that leadership, as I said before, is a lowly position, meaning many times you are the one that is out there in front. It doesn't necessarily mean it's lonely, but it is lowly. Not meaning you may not have allies, meaning you may feel like you're ahead of the curve. You may feel that no one else may understand you quite in your struggle. And this is part of the burden and blessing of leadership. And so I commend you, Miss. How do I say your name, Miss Parks?
Just say Tashawn. Just say
Sean.
That makes it
Sean.
easy.
Thank you for sharing your story in this piece with us.
You guys are
You
phenomenal.
ain't sharing no food, but
Thank you.
that's okay.
Thank you.
You want some food? I'm just saying, I'm working. Like,
Oh, really?
It's so close. Could I get some, please?
I will.
I don't know how to use chopsticks, so it's,
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. Actually, that's quite good. Thank you.
Keep it. You guys are phenomenal. Keep it up. I have been enjoyed listening when I couldn't get on here. If you guys are in the corner, please share. If you're not sharing, you should.
We are.
You know, you have men on here giving great content.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tashawn,
Thank you.
All right.
to eat. And just for an FYI, Tashawn is going to be on my show tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern, and she's going to rock the house. She's just laying the foundation for tomorrow night. So we'll let you finish your food. Thanks again for taking the time.
Love you. You
Sean.
have a wonderful night.
God bless.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Oh, she was great.
Isn't that wonderful?
She makes some interesting points. Yeah, but you know the whole concept of the lie that we tell is I think Glenn, and I want to get Glenn to this part. It's my segue because this is your work. I mean, this is what you do.
Yeah.
But part of getting to the lie, and this is something I've learned to do with young men, and not until I began to work with you realize how deeply rooted this issue is amongst men. Is I always get young men, we take and identify the challenges and we knock them down one at a time. Whatever that lie is and all the parts is what I call the 5 whys. You were doing the because, right? They're literally 4 to 5 levels of a lie. And once you begin to knock down each one, once the first 2 fall, the rest are easy. And Glenn, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about how that process of addressing the lie really is a powerful experience because it's literally life altering. Once someone recognizes there's a faction of what they're doing and what they're living that is a false belief that's holding them where they are.
Well, thank you, Dr. Thompson. And our hour is almost already up. There's a way of backing into it that and there should be a whole night. You bring up actually a great way to unpack the whole process.
Yeah.
But I would say a simple way for all of our listeners to maybe think about this is think of your judgments. And I think if I hear somebody say I don't have any judgments, I think that's a lie. Because if you didn't have judgments, you'd have no discernment. And judgments aren't necessarily bad. They're just judgments. Be glad you have judgments, because without them, without that discernment, and for you to take a leap of faith of what you experience helps you with, you may forget that going off a cliff could hurt you. So this kind of discernment, these kind of judgments, it's a natural part of us, and I don't condemn judgments. So, but what I can say is this. We unpack it in a very simple way to say, there's an emotional charge. I'm upset about something. That came from my judgments. That hopefully came from data. So the other way goes, something happened, I formed a judgment, and so I have these feelings. Where it gets mixed up is something that I call JADA. It's my own word for it. It's judgments that are acting like data. Because I have a strong conviction, I'm making up that that's true. Is it? The unpacking of the judgment is what separates the data. What actually happened? What did I make up about it? Right? And so therefore I feel justified to feel this way. Dr. Thompson got into a good piece too that wonder if we got to do something on shadow, because what we'll find when you back into past the feeling into the judgment and into the data, you start to rub against shadow, which means what was the original projection idea that kind of started this whole thing? That's kind of where there's a wounding behind that. You know, this is how my judgments got to be so set up to feel this way. What you'll find is people will react one of two ways. Either they get slippery, you can't nail them down, or they get pushback. Back off.
Mm-hmm.
If once someone you can't nail them down, well, you know, it slips into that part, it slips into that kind of story, it stays in the story, and you can't get to what really happened, you're right up against it. And that's where the greatest protection layer is. And either you get actual pushback or you'll get a very slippery individual that just can't go there. They can't get to the truth. Because that would mean everything I said, everything I believed was wrong. So I don't want to overcomplicate this, and there's all these levels like Dr. Thompson knows very well. And you should maybe host this, Dr. Thompson. But I'll say it this way. Think about your judgments. Many of the judgments that you make, examine, do you really have data, or are you just making stuff up? And if you're making it up, you're going to follow through with that make-up story part as if it was real. And you won't go,
hey, Glenn, let me add,
you won't go beyond that because you've convinced yourself that that's it.
Yeah.
And
a lot
that's
of
where
times,
most of the mistakes are made.
Yeah, and I will add, Glenn, a lot of times people will use an event as data. And that's a fallacy.
Judgments as data.
Just because something happened,
I make it up,
it
and that's
happened becomes, it becomes a fact. It's a fact that it happened, but it doesn't automatically tie into a belief system about something.
It's the interpretation.
So I don't know.
It's the interpretation that goes wrong. Not that something happened. Of course, something happened. What's the interpretation? That's the story that gets twisted, and now the emotional charge is there. That's because. And now out comes the story.
Glenn, I know that you probably have to. How much?
I do. I have to go.
Oh,
I'm putting on a homecoming tomorrow.
All right. So, Glenn, gonna let you. We're gonna continue on the conversation. Tony's jumped on, and there's some other points I want to get out with the audience tonight. But, Glenn, thanks again for bringing another great topic to the Blab Forum. Before we let you go, how can people connect up with you?
Thank you. What I'm promoting is to have men's groups in all of our communities. So if you'd like to start a men's council, start a men's mentoring group in your community, we have tools and protocols that help grow better men, and we want to start with the mentors. I believe there's healthy men as mentors. We can provide a community where a lot of disenfranchised men can come in and grow themselves and grow each other as better men. So if you're interested in having a men's group or men's council in your community, connect with me, Glenn Barker, with the Mankind Project at 312-243-6743. 312-243-6743. You can find Glenn Barker on Facebook, and MKP Chicago's on Facebook. MKP Chicago's on Twitter, and you can find mkpchicago.org on the internet. Thank you all for being with us. A wonderful show. We'll see you next time.
Glenn, take care. Thank you so much.
Get some rest, brother.
Okay, Glenn is gone, but the conversation continues because you want the conversation to continue, people. I see lots of people on here. Tony has jumped on and all conversation piece. I don't know if he wants me to bring it to the table or he'll come on. But Tony, thanks so much for jumping in. You want to chat about another important subject, so please enjoy and come on in.
Thank you, Dr. Vibe and Dr. T, for allowing me to share in this conversation with you. I was just, wrestling with whether or not I even wanted to come on and share this, because I think about my life as a small child, a very young child. And the lie that I was told directly and indirectly was that as a dark-skinned Black child, I had a double whammy, that just to be black, and then to be dark skinned, that I had no value, and that I wasn't capable of anything of any substance.
Wow.
That I, couldn't contribute.
Wow.
And for, I'm going to say probably through elementary school, it was believed and internalized. And the way in which the way in which it manifested itself was that I was in school, but I wasn't really participating in the learning process because I was already a dreamer. And the things that were going on in the classroom didn't really interest me. And so it wasn't until, and the system in which I grew up in, elementary school went from the 1st grade to the 5th grade. And I remember that my report card was full of F's, failing grades.
Wow.
And my classroom teacher told me that I would never, ever be anything. And that he recommended to my parents that I be kept back, that I would be, wouldn't be allowed to be promoted. And I kind of, felt that it was true, that I didn't have any value, and that, if this is all that I was supposed to be, was just, kind of exist. And so I went to junior high school, which was 6th grade through, it was
7th grade.
7th grade through 9th grade, yeah. And so my first encounter with a teacher was to really sort of just change all that. And it was one man who just made a decision that I'm not going to let you believe that about yourself. And to make a long story short, I went from being, a student who shouldn't have been promoted to having the 3rd highest GPA in that middle school.
Nice. And
interesting thing was I was a fairly good high school basketball player, and I really sort of got my start in the middle school team. And the funny thing was that I made the team, but it was commonly known by everybody except for me that I only made the team because they wanted somebody on the team that had a good GPA.
Oh.
And
oh, man.
And so it was, I had, some of the other guys coming to me saying, well, they only wanted you on there because they wanted somebody who had a good GPA. You're not
for your jump shot,
you're not
right?
one of the best players. And so it was at that point that I made a point of making sure that I was a better basketball player. And so I ended up being a pretty good basketball player and a person with a good GPA.
Excellent. Well, so,
that's a great story, Tony. That is a great
I've got to
story.
say that that will go into the Dr. Vibe Show vault of great stories, because I know it wasn't easy for you to share it.
That's
I know
right.
that it's not being shared a lot. So I'm very humbled that you found it comfortable to share it on this platform. So I really appreciate it. And with as many props you're getting from people out there, it just, you've got a story, my brother, and you got to share that as much as you can, because that was deep. You were getting, I'm going to say I was tearing up when I was hearing that story. So
well, let me say this, Dr. Vibe. That was one hurdle. but the lie of being a dark-skinned black man continued. And so I remember very distinctly when I was about to graduate from high school that my father was a disabled veteran, and so there was an opportunity to get some veterans benefits to go to college. And so I remember going to Veterans Administration to have an interview to evaluate whether or not I should receive any funds. And so it was an interview process. You go, well, you had to take, at that time, you had to take a test. You take the test and then you have to write composition. And so I took the test and I wrote the composition. And when it was finished, this young majority person came out and said, you know, we've looked at your information, we've looked at your high school transcript, and we've determined that you are not college material, that you should try to get a trade, and we will support you in that endeavor, and that you know, maybe you want to consider, you know, the armed services, but you're definitely not college material. And I believed it. And I was a good enough basketball player that I had schools that were very interested in me. And my parents were extremely protective. And I grew up in probably one of the most dangerous cities in the world at that time. And there was a lot of things to be afraid of. There was a lot of things happening. And, you know, I think about, you know, how sometimes we were in the playground playing ball, and, you know, people were doing things, and all kinds of things were happening around us, and we were so oblivious to it because all we were thinking about was playing ball at that time. And so I had two very nice scholarship opportunities, and my parents were reluctant to let me know that they didn't want me to go away to school. And so what ended up happening was I lost both of those opportunities and ended up going to local school, where I furthered the lie, in that I went to the school and didn't do anything. I just was there. And so I guess in a way, a good thing happened was that I got hurt playing ball. And so that really showed, you know, what my value was in terms of I was immediately Well, not immediately. Well, I got hurt, and there was no conversation, no recourse or conversation from the school. There was no, I was just a replaceable part, and they had moved on. And so, fast forward 3 years, worked all kinds of different, jobs, because that was my value, that I was just a worker. And there's nothing wrong with being a worker. But I didn't know that I was capable of more than just being a worker. So had a conversation with my mother, and I told her that I needed to leave. I didn't know where I was going to go, but I know I needed to leave. And I was very involved in the church, and always had been. And so I started reading a lot of information about Dr. King. And so I decided that I wanted to go to Morehouse College. And my father had a cousin that lived in Atlanta at the time, and he asked her if I could come and stay with her. And so they said, well, you could try it out, and then, if you don't like it, you can always come back. And ooh.
Hang on. That's all right.
Come on, bro.
Come on, bro.
Okay, so
We're here with you, brother.
wow.
Come on, you can do it.
So I came to Atlanta, and went to the college, and I told them that I wanted to go to school, and they were like, "You want to come to school here? Well, you hadn't done an application. You don't have financial aid. You hadn't even applied to the college for admission. So what makes you think you could come to school here?"
Mm.
And I started telling the dean of the chapel, Dr. Lawrence Carter, that I told him my story, basically. And ironically, here was another intelligent, very dark-skinned Black man who I sort of immediately identified with. And so in telling him my story, he said, well, one of the things that you shared with me was that you had learned how to become an offset printer. And we have a printing press here at the school. And maybe you can run the printing press as a work study job. And I said, sure, I'd be interested in trying, whatever. And so he took me to the dean of the chapel, and so he took me to the director of public relations, and that's where the printing press was located. So I went to there, and he said, we definitely would, like to use you in terms of running the press part-time. And so to make a long story short, I got accepted to the college, and I started in January of 1983 as a 24-year-old freshman. And 3 years later, I graduated.
Wonderful.
Amen.
Wonderful.
Congratulations, my friend.
That's an amazing.
Proud of you. Proud of you.
Tony, again, thank you. I got a request. I need to get you just one-on-one on my show, because I know that just by the audience reacting here, you're hitting it out of the park. And as like I share with everybody has a 6-figure story. I think you have a 7-figure story.
Yes, sir.
And
it's a great story. It's a great truth, Tony.
And I am proud of you, man.
I second that whole thing. And the thing is, I was watching your whole face and hearing your story. You were present with your story, which means that you've been healing this whole time, and your reasoning for getting on this broadcast is to continue to heal. I saw how you were. I see how you are present with that story and how it still impacts you and how you're still trying to move past it. And please just continue to do the work, because we need you.
We may not be here physically with you, but you got us online, and please, telling you, you got me getting close to balling, brother. You got me close to balling, and that's a good thing. That's a very good thing, man. Tony, no problems. No problems. I'm going to get you one-on-one on my show, and I want you to just, I don't care how long it takes. It's going to be you. You just give me the story. And if you need to write a book.
Yes. I was getting ready to say the same thing. Have you written down your story?
Yeah, and if you need some guidance on that, I can direct you. You need to write a book, because I would buy it. I'm already buying what you got. And I know there's stuff that you haven't said yet.
But that's a story that a lot of young men out here, Tony, if you're trying to find a value in your story, there's a value in it that everybody who's watching this right now sees and heard in you. And I can tell, and I think many of the listeners can, you are still living through that in a way that you are continuing to grow and expand beyond all of the lies that were told to you and you absorbed and have been creating your own new truths.
Yeah.
I think with Dr. Vibe and John, and I think a lot of the people who are listening here would share with you, is your story is valuable. And Tony, I work with thousands of young boys, tens of thousands of young boys over the last 20 years of my career. And in the last 5, the absence of men who can relate a story because they develop beyond their story, beyond their lie, beyond the lies that were told. And I'm not talking about the famous athlete. I'm not talking about the actor, because these kids know this one thing, and this is why they find it so difficult to connect with the men around them. And Glenn alluded to this earlier. Most men won't do what you just did.
Oh my gosh. Oh my God.
And that's the biggest challenge.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. We'll move on a little bit. I don't know if you gentlemen can stay on for a little bit more, because I wanted, and John, I've got to give you much respect, because I know that you want to bring something, but you held back respectfully to hear that. So I know that you want to chat about, and I know all of us will contribute about the lie believing that we are men before we've learned to be healthy boys.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So I know it's hard to top Tony, but I'm going to let you have some say, so go for it.
No, I just want to stand on his shoulders, and all I want to do is just collaborate and corroborate what Dr. Tia said and what you said, Dr. Vibe, and what Glenn said and what Tony said. I was taking notes as Tony was talking, and to sum my whole point of view up, this means it's so imperative and so urgent for us to get to the truth about ourselves as quickly as possible. Because if we don't get to the truth about ourselves and how great we are and how wonderful we are and how capable we are and how vulnerable we are, we will pack the lie on and solidify it and cement it from boyhood. And then on top of that, you imagine what we're telling ourselves, and then our parents layer on a label, and then our teachers layer on a label. Then the world, the strangers that we come across have a label for us. Then our workplaces have a label, for us. And just imagine how difficult it is to unpack all that. Dr. T talked about something I subscribe to, which is called the 5 whys. Like, you're going to have to ask 500 whys in order to dig through all of those cement layers that we've placed on ourselves. So again, it's just so imperative for us to get to the truth about ourselves and to teach ourselves the truth about ourselves from the very beginning. You could say from the womb, immediately when we come out, because if we don't, we are subject to get lost so quickly and so early. And most people don't, again, have the courage or the vulnerability to do what Tony did at whatever age he is and try to unpack the damage that has been done. And so, again, we just have to do the work early, and we have to teach one another, and we have to care for one another so urgently and so deeply.
Anyone?
Well stated. Well said.
Anyone want to add to those comments, whether it's in the chat room or just in general? Tony, I'm going to say something that I don't say too often, but there are moments during the journey of the Dr. Vibe show. What you shared with us tonight is a moment.
Yeah.
That has taken what I do to another level. Because those are just some moments of people say, oh, what's some special moment? Well, you've just given me a special moment that I will be able to share with hundreds of people. So I have to commend you. And again, too, also, John, the importance about boys and men living the lives. If boys are living lives, then they're going to live lives as men. And Tony realized the lies as he was growing up, and he's unpacking them as a man.
Yeah, and let me say this, and Dr. Vibe, you just alluded to it, and Tony, and John, and I think it manifests itself in some of what Tony stated. In certain communities, we talk about cycles.
Yes.
Right? And those cycles are driven by, and I've said this many, many, many times, when you read about the cycle of poverty and all of those components that are woven within the cycle of poverty. And I just bought a book, and I'm sitting here still reading it. The Patrick Moynihan report from LBJ to Obama and all of the things that transpired with it. One of the things that people don't recognize in these patterns and cycles that we talk about, and Tony's a perfect example, is the belief systems that are woven out of lies. And those lies are perpetuated, as John explained, socially, but probably the most powerful level of a lie is told within the 4 walls of every home. And those dysfunctions,
go there, Dr. T, go there.
But those are the dysfunctions that actually manifest themselves when the door is open and you step out of the house. Because that's when you basically engage with the lie at a social level, at a macro level. But those are the lies that are told internally. So when we talk about, in Tony's example of interacting with a system, and the system projecting lies to Tony that he's having to live, he carries those back into his home that his parents have to manage, right? They're not influencing, they're having to manage. And this was an ongoing pattern. And if you take Tony's example and you take a look at our society and you start taking a look at our youth, and let's be real clear about this, let's also not discount the fact that there are 40-year-old men out here today who are products of the same environments that we're talking about, 50, 60-year-old men who are products of it. So when we start talking about cycles of poverty, cycles of crime, cycles of this, those are outcomes of other lies. They're just the manifestations of other belief systems that have been projected upon everybody who's participating. And the only way to eradicate it is the way that Tony is doing at this moment. It's not going at it collectively and holistically, because it has to start with the individual. Truth is heard when truth is lived.
Say so.
Truth, that's when it's heard. Because if you haven't lived the truth, as Tony just shared with us tonight, it's very hard to make those changes that we're all hoping for. So this conversation about the lie, and Tony, bless you, for coming to us today to put it in that context. You know, you don't have to be eloquent about it, which you were. You were beyond eloquent. But I think what he did was really take this to a level of understanding about the implications of the lie. And when I have a 22 and 23-year-old son and daughter, and it's amazing to me, I have talked to them about the lie and being able to identify it internally, externally, and then what's going to be your response. But they have moved to the level that I like them. I've always wanted them to be, and they got there way sooner, was they begin to recognize the lie and then identify how that lie interferes with their path, with their goal. And this is why goals are so important for not only young people, but for all of us. And Tony, I can only imagine in the story that you have, and there's a lot more to it, what goals came out of your revelations.
Tony, I don't know how much energy you got left. Anything you'd like to add?
I'm a retired special education teacher. I'm an ordained minister. I'm a father of two young men, 21 and 23. I'm a husband. I'd like to think that I'm a contributor to society. And there's probably some other things that I could say, but
it's okay. No, you know what? I'm not going to say you're a contributor to society. You're a positive contributor to society. You're not just a contributor to society. You're a positive contribution to society. You have given me another reason to go harder at what I have to do and what I need to do.
Well, I think one of the ironic things about this whole thing is that I actually did not get on here to talk about what I talked about. What I wanted to talk about was self-hate.
Yeah, I know.
That
you communicated it, most definitely.
Wow. It's all right, Tony. It's all good.
Tony, thank you, my friend.
Okay, guys. Thank you for letting me participate. I appreciate it.
Anytime, brother.
You're a friend always, my man. Wow.
Well, powerful.
Wow.
That was a lot.
That's why we get up every day, Dr. V. John, that's why we get up every day.
Exactly why we must do what we do.
Exactly. Like,
you got it.
I'm just speaking that I remember when Glenn and myself and Dr. T talked about the vision of what we were doing online. That is exactly what we would.
That's why we moved the forum. That's why we moved the forum.
Exactly. I wanted to make sure he got everything out, and the impact is just wow. That is, if people ask me why I do that, probably 10 or 15 minutes said it all right there.
Mm-hmm.
That said all there. Anyone else want to jump on a chair? I won't want to stay on too much longer, but man, it's hard to top Tony. And again, John, thanks for holding off. I wanted to give him time. And
no, man, this is, you have to, we talked about discernment earlier. You have to have that discernment to let things go when you know lives are being saved, especially that of Tony's. And so I had to shut up. It was nothing. And
also when especially men's lives are in the battle, getting a chance to speak that, because one of the reasons I do this platform is I want men and those who love them to see that we can talk like this.
Yeah.
Get those lies out. It's not all a lie. There you saw yeah. I like that. Tony just said, thank you, gentlemen. I am lighter. Thank you. We are stronger and better off because of it. Tony, thank you so much. Like I said, anytime
Wow.
you come on, that. Well, those who are watching the blog tonight, I don't think you expected that, and I'm glad you came on, because I hope you're moved at least 1% as much as I've been moved.
Oh, hey man, you didn't tell me I had to invest in tissues for this show.
You should have known, sir.
All I have is a pen. I got a pen, a notepad, and some. I didn't know I had to have tissue.
Should have known.
Anyone else want to jump in about letting go of a lie? We have generation lies that we have to change. Agreed, Diana L. White. That is so true. And there's an album by a gentleman named Rod Stewart, released many years ago. Every picture tells a story.
Say so.
Yeah. And here's the hard part, and I'm going to address what Diana was talking about, and John. I think in our previous discussion, it's always something we talk around. But in these systems, and you hear this a lot, we all operate in systems. Nothing functions continuously unless it's been systematized. So when you have a system and things that occur over and over, the response within those systems become engineered. So if the actions are engineered, the thoughts about the actions are also engineered. And this is where we have in this disconnect in young people is they see the system not working for them. And as we talk about stepping out and our young men looking at the world, no matter what their thought is about wanting to do something, that thought is challenged by the fact that they can see, touch, hear, and feel the system's impact and the projections of those lies about themselves. And it doesn't matter who you are. Mm-hmm. It definitely conflicts with the individual pursuits of self-determination. And so when you start seeing those things and you're having to fit into a box in every category, young people rebel against that. And some of the lies about their desires manifest themselves. So this is some of the things that when we start seeing our young people rebel, this is not the nature of young people. What we're seeing is that their nature is not being allowed to develop. Ooh. So that's the real issue of our young people. And I hate hearing this, well, that's the way young people are. No, within the system you've structured, that's their response, but that's not who they are. Mm. And those are the things where we have a huge disconnect. So what happens is that response by these young people becomes their reality. It now changes their perceptions about what their pursuits are going to be. And now their stories are created out of experience. And it's hard to deny an experience. The most powerful lie is reinforced through an experience. And once it can be recounted and it can be explained and told, it now becomes the person. And that's the hard thing to break. Well, if I've stepped in the water one time and I almost got bit by a shark, I'm not getting back in the water. Right? That's just common sense, maybe. I don't know.
Well,
no, but that then becomes your reality.
Yep.
It becomes your reality. Right. So fear of spiders, fear of this, and any psychologist will tell you breaking down people's fear, arachnophobia, isn't because spiders are evil. It's because of an experience, a story that was told, right? Or a lie or something that manifests itself and it becomes the reason. And it might even just be an associative reason. Mm. So there's a lot of things that we see with our young people that are really a part of what the system structure is. And what really terrifies me, and I want you to really think about this, we've been having this experience and these experiences with our young people who are now men. So for the last 50 to 60 years, our response has always been the same. It has always been a Band-Aid approach. Mm. It has always been a new system on top of the other within the system. So they're not breaking down the system. So what happens is the paradigm of experiences and thought never changes because we're not building it from the life and experience of the learner. We're building it from the benefit of the system. And Tony's story really epitomizes that because that's a story that man was bold enough to publicly share that our culture does not allow men to share. If more Tonys over the last 50 or 60 years told that story and it were a part of the natural discussion amongst men,
oh my God,
how would our world be?
I knew you were going to say it.
Yeah. Where would our world be?
Yeah, I hear you. And I see John is just his mind is just like blowing, man. Yeah.
Well, John knows. Well, he's been thinking it. He's every time you're on, he's either writing about. These are the things that are at the underlying basis for all of the dysfunctions that we see and we keep experiencing in the cycles that we keep talking about. So how do you break that cycle? You have to disengage from the thought processes within the system. And that's a tough balance because you can't totally disconnect from the system. But what you have to do is see the system for what it is.
Yeah, and what I took from what you said, Dr. T, I just wrote, I'm taking crazy notes here. We have to create different experiences and exposure for one another.
Absolutely.
Because that's how the junk gets solidified when through the experiences. So if we are able to create different experiences and tests and exposure for one another, I think slowly but surely we can turn what has been solidified in the past.
You got it. And John, that's what our young people desire. They desire that. I have watched more young people and had them come up to me as a principal of a school and say, Doc, I know we have to learn this stuff, but do we have to do it this way? And I go, no. What do you want to do? You know, you got to get them to own it. The system is there for them to use. And that's what I always let them know. The system's there for them to use. But the adults in our world have to first give themselves permission to be that bold before they can empower someone else.
Oh my God.
People use that word all the time. I'm going to empower you. It's like, hold on, man. How empowered are you?
Say so.
I didn't ask you how much power you have. I asked you how empowered are you.
Speak it.
Yeah. You can't give me something you yourself can't do. Right? You can talk about it. You can tell me about it. But if you're not empowered enough to confront the things that you want to do and have done it and can anticipate the response and weather that storm, you certainly can't empower me as I go through it.
You know,
and that's why the stories like John's are so powerful.
I want to stand on your shoulders, and I may step on some toes here. And I said it in another blab before. I mean, we put so much investment in our youth. I think it's just imperative that we put some additional and just as much investment in healing our adults, because our adults are what's passing. Our adults are in charge of the knowledge share with our youth. And if you have damaged adults, how can you expect the youth to come out okay? They're just not going to be okay by themselves.
Amen. Yeah. Amen.
I agree.
Great point, John. Great point. And you guys, let's look at the cycle that we're talking about. Our men today, and we've seen these shifts in our society. We've seen the biggest and the most dramatic changes in the history of America in the last 20 years, militarily, technologically, socially, and they're continuing to expand. You know, it took the civil rights movement, I don't know how many years just to get what we got, even for the civil rights movement to be there. But now we have the rights. Once that achievement was obtained, the model was created.
Yeah.
The model for change. And I think people don't connect. Well, some people do, but those that help the masses as a whole understand for a collective whole society haven't gotten all of that. So our young people today, and I think John brings up an excellent point, we have generations of men, and understand generations. Generations isn't 25 years. I've said this over and over again. In a school, a generation is 8th grade. It's not 12th grade.
Wow.
It's 8th grade. Predictors are made on 8th grade. So a generation of school, and if you start looking at the reform movement, it typically goes through 2 generations, a cycle of 2 generations before there's a new reform movement. So when you start looking at the outcomes of a generation of men, it's by the age of 25. That's when you become influenced by those social standards that you've lived through, and you're now living upon those lies which you've experienced. They're going to influence you. And if you look at, and this, go back to Tony's story, it's powerful. So when you start looking at the generations, going to your point, John, of helping our men who have lived through this, how many generations? I'm 52 years old. So what are we talking? 10 generations of men, 20 generations of men, right? 10, wow. Right? Who've lived through this. I'm not that old, but that's how many men are being affected by this process. And until we get them to the point where Tony was, just to acknowledge it. And Tony's at a great state, because when he hears something not right, you know what's powerful about Tony? He has a story that he can connect with whoever's going through it. And if more men were empowered enough to say, hey, I understand. So I got to let you let that go so you can go to the next place, right? And we have generations of men who are holding on to stories from when they were 10.
Oh, my gosh.
They were 10. I'm 52 years old. How would it be if I'm like, well, why are you this way, Dr. T? Well, my mom drank a lot, and, I left home when she was 11. Hey, man, how old are you now? I'm 52. You mean that happened when you were 11? And what? Come on, man. I ain't trying to hear all that. I'm not trying to hear that. But at some point, here's the reality. Most men who have lived through that have no place to turn to share.
There you go.
So they have no choice but to hang on to it. And Dr. Vibe, as you said, for the men and the people who love them, for those people who love men, we have to find a collective, get to a collective point of understanding that men need a place to go without shame, without loss of value, to be able to share the experiences of a Tony. You don't get a weaker man, you get a more powerful man. You get a man who's going to stand a whole lot straighter when he knows that story is safe.
Yeah.
That story is supported. And more importantly, it's a reflection of supporting him, the individual.
See, unfortunately, the men who are in that situation, these too much are going in their cave. And that's why I get of course, you hear that terminology. This is my man cave.
But and that's literal. It's just a literal manifestation of everything we're talking about.
What is the purpose of a man cave?
For you
Usually it's to seclude.
There you go.
And escape. It's an escape. Look what goes on down there. Come on, man. Look what goes on in the man cave. It ain't like you engage with anything but the television, right?
That's my man cave. This is where
and if you got a down there,
this is where I can block off from the real world. Mike,
you got it.
It's not always a good friend thing, guys. Occasionally, yes, but when you make it your domain, your kingdom, I don't know.
Hey, and let me just make a disclaimer for all the ladies out here who have a significant other who has a man cave. Don't go rushing in there tonight just because we said.
Please.
Don't be going in there saying, "Oh, Dr. Bob, Dr. T, and John said, no, ain't go down like that."
It's not gonna go well. It's not gonna go well.
Deanna L. White, that's where my boyfriend is right now. Okay.
I'm just saying, I don't want to lose none of y'all.
All right.
Oh man, I was gonna share this with my husband. Share it with him.
Yeah.
Share it with him. See how long. Share the part of Tony with him. I'd love to know his reaction to that.
That's real.
Yeah.
Hey, Dr. Vibe, you had Tashan on earlier, and you're going to have her on your show. I don't know if I missed the part because I was putting Miles to bed, but I don't know what she said. But she had a blab the other day where she had
Kevin Madison.
And Fitz on. Maybe you were on there. We talked about fear. And she highlighted men. And the beautiful thing, not only was the content of her blab so very awesome and poignant, but I really applauded her because she created a safe space for us men to talk about fear and to be vulnerable and to come up with solutions to define what fear really is and to develop actions to address and attack fear. And I really, please, if you could talk with her about that when she comes back on your show, I think she has a real heart for us, and that, along with a lot of the other people in this sideline here, she has a real heart for making sure that we get healed.
No problem. You know what? I
Just
love
it.
the Army. I'll take anyone who has the right heart. Actually, a lady who's joined on now, Marie Roker Jones. She's another great lady. She has a great project, raising great men. She's the same way. I can't remember the name of the article she wrote about, basically the society's interpretation of young black boys. Wrote a great article about that the other day. But I hear her, and I receive that. Anyone who has the right heart, and I don't care if they're male or female, I'd like more males in the skin of the game. I don't think there's enough of them in the skin of the game. But you know what? I'll take anyone who has the right heart. So that is, that's what I'm here for. That's what we're here for. I believe it. I'm still sort of moved by Tony's story. It's still in me right now. So I'm not 100% on it, because that just impacted my brain, a part of my brain saying, man, that just looms large.
That's real.
Yeah.
That's real.
Yeah, it does.
And I'm very appreciative for all the ladies that are on tonight to hear that story and the transparency. And what really hit me, said he didn't come on really wanting to say anything about that.
Well, that's because, you know what? It was meant to be spoken.
So it
was meant to be spoken. That's how you know it was from the heart.
Yeah.
And so I just say, anyone else want to come on maybe a few more minutes? I didn't expect this one to go so long, but I don't want to shut it down unless I really got to. But I think we've covered so much tonight, and I'm really and truly, this is what we do. This is what we do each Tuesday night at I want to share an experience I had when it came to showing heart. I always wanted a radio crew with no formal training. I called the boss, and they offered me okay. I'll give you, if you want to come on, just a few minutes, because I do want to shut it down at the bottom of the hour, because I do want to get some sleep, and plus I got to get ready for Tashan tomorrow. But if you want to come on,
let's let her
come on.
Yeah. Come on in, Jay.
Please do. Okay, Jace, I'm gonna let you in.
Hello there. I would like to just give a brief warning that my son is in the next room. So if it gets loud,
okay.
If it gets loud, you know.
How you doing,
I am peachy. I'm peachy because I'm round and fuzzy. How are you guys?
I love it, man. Bro,
I love the intro. What's up? What would you like to share, my man?
When it comes to showing heart, as I was saying in the comments, I've always wanted a career in radio, being a radio personality, or anything behind the scenes, working with people, getting to know people, or just using my voice, maybe my experiences, so that somebody else can understand where other people are coming from in life. And one day I went out on a whim. I emailed the production manager and I explained to him it's a childhood dream of mine. I've done it for free and for fun. I've had experience only being in the studio a couple of times, and I loved every minute of it. And he goes, well, why don't you come in? We'll get you set up with a paid internship, and I start next week.
Fantastic, brother.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Okay, let me cycle back now. Did you ever have people tell you the lie that you couldn't
absolutely.
do it?
And you know what I tell them? When I'm at the top, I'll call you. Tell me again.
But what, and I appreciate that, but what experience did you have to change that lie in your life?
Sorry,
what happened, or what did you do to change that? No, I'm just saying.
I lost my job.
What?
I lost my job.
Obviously, there were.
I lost my job back in May.
Wow.
It was a job that I had for 2 years. It was a job that I felt I was good at. It was a job that I felt that I provided a service to people. And you know what? Even if you work at McDonald's, man, you're providing a service to someone. And that's the way I look at things. I lost my job back in May. And I found Blab. And Blab has helped me kind of in a therapeutic sense. Because guess what? Dr. Vibe, you may come on, you may have a smile every day, but I don't know what's happening in your heart. I don't know what's happening at home. And if maybe there's one guy that goes, you know what, I don't care what they think about me. I'm going to tell them what I'm feeling today. And if they feel me, they feel me. If they don't, they'll move on to another blab. And maybe there's going to be somebody in the corner who's just sitting there, who maybe just lost their job today. And they're going, look at this guy. He's coming in. He's busting his chops. He's trying to help everything that he can. He's trying to offer everything that he can do.
Yeah.
And I think that if I go into this radio job and I'm like, you know what, man, I'm just like everybody else, man. I have hard days. I struggle. I struggle to make bills sometimes. I fight with my wife. I argue. I'm married. I'm never right to begin with. So
you better believe it. You better believe it.
You go.
So I know my role.
Go.
And if I have to play my role for somebody else to understand, man, we all got a job to do in life. That's what it is for me.
You know what? I compliment you as Tarshell B said, tell your truth.
My
And
pleasure.
we appreciate you
Thank
telling
you for letting me come in.
your truth. And I have no problem. I have a little bit of a background in the radio stuff. If you need any suggestions or anything like that, follow me on Twitter. We can direct message. I'd love to keep in touch with you. And if anything I can do to help you get to where you want to be, I'll do whatever I can, because as men, that's what we need to do.
Congratulations.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me, and I hope everybody in the comments and everybody on screen has a great evening.
Yeah, dude.
You too, my friend.
Nice work, man.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, then.
Oh, that's great.
Well, they're coming, gentlemen. You got time? They're coming in fast and
Good
furious.
work.
That was fantastic.
That's good work.
Deanna, if you want to come back in, I saw you wanted to come back in for a second, then you flashed out. So I'm going to give you a minute to come on in. If not, we're going to shut it down. But this has been one of the most powerful. No, it's an accident. Oh, Tony is back. All right, come on now. The star of the night is Rockin' House.
We're doing
Tony,
okay.
how we doing?
And, I just want to say thank you to all of you for lending your ear. And I guess the sad truth is that I didn't even realize that I needed to get all that out. So again, I thank you very much for allowing me to do that.
Well, you know what? We didn't lend our ear. We gave you our heart.
We had the easy part, Tony. You had the hard work.
We gave you our heart. As I say with a lot of people, there's a lot of things that are in here that don't get meaningful till they get in here.
Yeah, man.
You left a lot on the table, Tony, but I think what's really important, that, like you said, you didn't intend it, which makes it even more powerful than had you come here with an agenda to share that particular story. But from the comments, and particularly the last gentleman that was here, and I think he made a very poignant observation. You never know who's listening, and you never know what the comment means to someone who is listening. Don't know what's going on in their lives. So, and I thank Jace for making that point.
Yeah.
Jace, that was so profound. And I'll also say, when we start talking about the lies that are told, and we said this an hour and a half ago into the show, one of the things that changes the lie is when you have to face it is through an experience. And Jace talked about, Dr. Vibe, you asked him, what changed for you? And he said, I lost my job. And that forced Jace to confront the lie. And at that moment, I wish, if he had more time, him going through that experience forced him to say, now what? And when all else is left and there's only one or two places to go, you can keep going down in despair and live on the lie. But there was something probably always in Jace that said, I know what they say. I know what I've heard, know what I've been told, know how they treat me, but I'm still going to go after it anyway.
Yeah.
And that, if more people did that, they would be where Jace is, who's in an emerging ownership. In Glenn's world, he has terms for that I won't even try to own because he does it so much more eloquently than I. That gets him to the place where he and Tony, I see, are on parallel tracks, where they're in this manhood journey of honesty that begins with self, not blaming past events for the reasons why I haven't, but using past events to propel yourself, which means you have to shake off some part of the lie to do it. You have to shake it. You cannot carry that lie with you and be successful and achieve.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, folks, we're going to close it. We're going to, no, Tony, before you leave, first of all, Tony,
good to see you, brother.
Thanks again from my heart. And second of all, if people want to follow you or connect with you, how can they do that?
I'm a streaming voice on Blab, streaming voice on Twitter. My email to reach out to me is streamingvoice@gmail.com.
Or you can type it in too on the side too after you say it.
And that's me.
All right.
I'll do.
John?
Yeah, man.
No problem. Thanks again for taking time, because I know you got family, you got your HR career, you got your Blab career, you got all going on. How can people, thanks again, how can people touch base with you?
Nah, man, this is necessary, and you are necessary. So I was happy to sacrifice. So you can reach me on Twitter and Facebook at Regeneration LBC. About me page is John Haynes III. I'm on Instagram at John Haynes III, and author of Me in 4 Seasons, a journal for your journey of change, on Amazon.com.
Well, and while we're closing out, if you want to type any of that information on the side so people can see it on the rebroadcast, no problem. Dr. T, wow.
I know, man.
Wow.
I know. This was one of my favorite shows. Tony, we owe you, brother. But this was one of, because Dr. Vibe didn't do anything this week. I mean, he was just slack. So I'm glad you came.
I just steered the ship, man.
Look, you know I'm not gonna let you slide like that.
No.
The difficult thing is, how are we going to top this? This is going to be the interesting part, but we'll find a way.
Clearly.
We'll find a way.
Dr. T, how can people touch base with you?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Dr. T Educates. You can reach me by email at Dr. T at drteducates.com. You can also visit our website for my educational foundation, lighthouseeducationfoundation.org. And you can reach me by phone at 804-305-0487.
John and Dr. T, as I close out, you may want to type that information on the side if you wish. That's your call. Wow. How can I close this out with not getting emotional? Well, you know what? I'm just going to roll with it here. This has been one of the most powerful conversations I've had in a long time on this show. And it just shows how powerful lies can be, how much they can entrap and, let me use the word, imprison us. And we need to find many of us need to find our get out of jail card.
The truth.
And you know what, John, you just said that the get out of jail card for many of us, not only when it comes to lies, but in many situations, maybe I'm going to say in all situations, is the truth. Is the truth. For those who saw it live, you saw what the truth did in Tony's life. If the truth can do what it did in his life, what can it do in each of our lives? Because I know each one of us, I'm first in line, still living some lies. But when we turn the lives into truths, it not only sets you free, but it sets you better. It not just sets you free, it sets you better. I am very humbled that so many people were listening to this tonight. I'm very humbled that so many people came in and talked about their lies that they overcame tonight. I cannot wait till people take time. And even though it's been 2 hours long, I have a feeling some people are going to watch this rebroadcast. Not just once, but for many years to come. And I don't like promoting too much, but I think you may want to share this with some people.
Oh yeah.
I'm actually gonna.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say. I'm actually gonna challenge. Who are you gonna share this with? I think the first person you need to share it with is yourself. Because when I get up tomorrow morning, I got the day off tomorrow. I'm gonna be watching this. So make sure that there's an old song by Supertramp called "Hide in Your Shell." Break the shell. Break the jail. Get your get out of jail card. Find whether it's a person, whether it's an action. What we say back home in Jamaica is yard by yard too hard, inch by inch it's a cinch. It took you a long time to get in that jail. So it's going to take some time, but just get a little bit better each day. I am Dr. Vibe. I'm host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show. Best way to touch base with me is at DRVIBESHOW. I'll type it out in the comments section right now. If you have any suggestions of shows you want men to talk about, men and those who love them to talk about here, please touch base with me. I'm going to be totally transparent. We didn't have a subject till yesterday. I don't think it was yesterday. I think it was this morning.
Yeah, it's about 10 o'clock this morning.
Wow.
And
yeah. We had a wide range. We were like trying to narrow it down, and Glenn just said, nope, that's what we're doing.
So this is the way I do the show. As long as the idea has meaning and sticks to the core of the show, it's on. This was not my idea, this show tonight. It was Glenn Barker's idea, and Glenn Barker left an hour ago.
Which means that it was greater than him too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, sorry, no, you'll catch the replay, no problem, a dub for spirits. So, as I always like to say, you're blessed and highly favored. You're a magnet for miracles, and you're a solution for someone's problem. Make sure you catch us next week, 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 Pacific, Tuesday nights, with the next part of all of our journeys. God bless. Peace be well. Keep the